but it is. You spend your whole life thinking you're not getting it. People aren't giving it to you. Then you realize they're trying. And you don't even know what it is. I had a dream. I was on a shelf in the refrigerator. Someone closes the door and the light goes off. And I know everybody's out there eating. And then they open the door and you see them smiling. And they're happy to see you. But maybe they don't look right at you. And maybe they don't pick you. Then the door closes again. The light goes off.
So intense. You know, and the other thing it reminds me so much of, in the best of ways, is like Willy Loman, attention must be paid, and that core search for someone to know us and not look away.
I don't even know what to say to that. That's the highest compliment I've ever heard. I don't even know what to say.
Well,
I like that it hasn't changed.
Right.
And I remember reading some of the stuff early on in this last season where people were talking about what characters why I was wasting their time. Was it Don spending time with other people and stuff? And I was like, what an interesting thing. I never thought about it, that there were new characters. You know, we were proud that we pulled off going to McCann and it was like a pilot. Right?
Right.
I mean, it's like a whole new set, whole new world, and the show was really going to take you there. They built a new set for an entirely new advertising agency.
Exactly.
I'm serious. It's like with 2 episodes left to go, it's like, you know,
Two people
I
know what
barely
that
got
costs,
away with
right?
that.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what that costs?
Right,
You don't
exactly.
just slap
Right,
paint on the other
exactly,
thing. Yeah, the view's a little bit different, but it seems to be pretty much like our old offices. No, it was a lot, a commitment, all that casting. We had to actually get rid of a lot of the extras that were at the old Sterling Cooper, which was terrible because they've been with the firm for so long.
Exactly.
We tried to keep that reality, but I was like, that's what this story is about. And let me tell you, and it's hard for John Hamm too. Because he does, you know, you want to end like Mary Tyler Moore. You want to end like on the set with all of your friends. And the idea that he was working with all these different people. And you know, he said goodbye to most of the main characters like about 3, you know, probably 8 or 10 weeks before we finished shooting.
Right.
Except for the phone call with Peggy and the stuff with Sally and Betty. And I thought, I want to see Don on his own. I want to see Don out there. I want to do an episode of The Fugitive where Don comes into town and he can be anybody. He is on the run. He's definitely a fugitive in his life. You know that movie Detour?
Yeah.
Do you know this Edgar Ulmer movie where the guy, at the end of the movie, it was a very profound scene I saw this movie in film school. It's like a $10 movie made by an incredible genius. The acting's terrible, and it's actually so campy that you can take it seriously. But at the end, the guy gets away with it, and he's driving, and he's giving this voiceover about one day I'll be driving, and they'll catch me, and blah, blah, blah. And while he's talking, he gets pulled over, and they pull him out of the car, and they take him away. And he keeps talking like this might happen.
Right, right.
And I think that sort of like netherworld of being on the run, I don't know about you, but I think this is everybody has dreams about being on the run, right? You committed a crime, whatever. Am I the only one? No?
Yeah, I think you are.
I think it's very common. You're lying. And so I like the idea that he would come to this place and it would be about other people.
Right.
And a moment of recognition. And I don't even think I could put into words what it is, but I knew Carrie Audino and Laura Schiff, our casting directors, when we go over every script before we do it, I go, so this is the finale. So I says, we need a guy for this character, Leonard. And I think we were still pitching it at this point. I don't think there was an actual script, was there? Semi, do you remember? Oh, I did. I'd written the speech. And I said, it's probably the most important role in the series. And I need somebody who's not famous and who can cry, and really do it. Like ugly, real things. And they're like,
right.
Oh, great, thank you.
Right.
And,
Also,
and
yeah.
Evan was we saw Good People. He was the first person who came in and read it. It was on a Saturday morning because I was shooting the other episode. And you just walk in and you realize you've come across incredible talent, which is one of the great things we got to do on the show because AMC never had an imperative about hiring famous people.
Right.
People who are famous are usually famous because they're incredibly talented. And a lot of people who sort of play that guy or whatever, they don't always get the credit, And so I felt, and we shot it a few times, but I felt it in the moment at the table read, we felt it. That he knew what it was, and I think it's still very familiar sentiment.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think what's so amazing about it, too, is how he literally seems like every man. He seems like average and one of us in the most complete and perfect way.
There is a thing that's sometimes spoken about with film where they talk about if people pop. Mm-hmm. And you can go out into the street and pick the handsomest man in the world or the most beautiful woman in the world and bring them in and film them, and you don't even notice them.
Right.
And there was something about Evan, and he's played a lot of regular people in his life. And Janie Bryant, my costume designer, put him in this invisible sweater.
Right, exactly.
And he is on the edge of frame, which was deliberate.
Right.
And John Hamm is on the frame. You're lucky if anyone else has ever seen.
Right.
Seriously, it's like one of those magic tricks.
Yes.
You could be like a fire.
Right, exactly.
And John's just sort of sitting there like that, and people are like, how about that fire? And they're like, I didn't see a fire. I just... It's like that with a lot of these, actors. And so he gets up, and it's literally like a magic trick, like a misdirection.
Right.
And he sits down, and we believe it right away that he's invisible, that it's true. And I don't know. I don't think there's enough empathy right now in the world. I think it's the thing that becomes the biggest shortage when there's privation.
Right.
It really is. It's just like it disappears, and it can become. I think people give it to their animals. I mean, I do. I think it's easy. It's a one-way street, and God knows they need it. And I think they do give it to their children.
Right.
I think we're living like even in the Great Depression, the children, the movies were made for the children. People had $1, and they would spend 10 cents of it to take their kids to the movies, even if they didn't have food. I think we spend it on our children, but I don't think we have any empathy for each other. And there's always an assumption that everyone else is trying to grab something that's yours, or trying to single themselves out, or how dare you try and stand above the rest of us and distinguish yourself in any way, because that's not cool. And I feel like it goes in and out. And at that moment, Don Draper in jeans. Oh my God! You know how long we went. I know it sounds so shallow, but people must have noticed it. I mean, what is he doing? Right? We've never seen that.
Right. No.
And Janie was saving it. And she kept mentioning it like different times, and I was on board with it at a certain point, and then I was like, she goes, I think he's wearing jeans. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, we see John Hamm every day in jeans.
Right.
But I will say that she got the prison cut jeans that were in style then, and they are and that incredible flannel shirt, and you're just like, the guy he is definitely out of uniform.
Right.
So I hope that the audience would feel either that he was embracing a part of himself or maybe them, and that they were hurt.
Right. It's amazing. I mean, it just is.
I don't want to put it into words more than that. It really doesn't. It really wasn't
right.
that intellectual.
Right.
You just know, like, I think actually, I'm terrible at this, but most of what you people like about the show comes from the writer's room, and can't always assume, and I just say it in a blanket way, and all the authorship is given to me. I mean, so many horrible mistakes have been avoided. I mean, right there, Semi ran the room these last 14 episodes. And just alone, so people understand this, one of the biggest arguments of the season was I did not want to end Betty and Pete's story the week before. I wanted that all in the finale. And it would have been a mess. Everything would have been like 5 seconds long.
Right.
And she's like, well, you'll have to live with the fact that they know some of the ending already. That's really what it was. It took some persuasion. Because I knew how it was. I was like, this is what's going to happen in the last episode.
She was right.
She was totally right. No, I mean...
No, because it's incredible the way that it builds through those 2 episodes. That it starts to kind of, to change.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be funny if I brought it up and I'm like, and I think it was a huge mistake. It's like, I just want to say that. Well, you know what? That is very much like me. I want to bring up something where I was right.
One of the things, I have so many questions, but one of the things I am curious about, what were the things that surprised you in the ways that characters changed or that caught you off guard in the process of making the series?
Well, I thought Joan was going to go through with that abortion. First of all, if you had asked me in the pilot, I didn't even know Joan was a main character until I met Christina Hendricks. And then we were like, tie her up, financially.
Right.
Get her attached to this project.
Right.
She was actually fired by her manager for joining the show because it was obviously a bad bet. It was. I don't blame them except for representation can be very destructive. They're good when it's going well though.
Right.
So I didn't know Joan, and I definitely didn't think that Joan would end up this single mom, feminist, looking for childcare on her own, Joan, I don't even know if Joan, I love the fact that it's not philosophical for her. I'm not demeaning the philosophy of feminism. I'm just saying this woman made a practical decision not to take any shit anymore. It was literally like every single thing that happened was basically saying you can do that or not do it. And she biologically loves work. But say we had a big turn in the story where I had always had this story about her basically missing her last chance to have a child. And Maria Jacques Maton, who had Semi's job for 5 or 6 years on the show, and her husband Andre said to me, she goes, we've made Joan 33, 34 years old. I know it's Roger's kid, but I think, and we're all pro-choice, by the way. None of this is even an issue. I thought telling the story of Roger not going there and Joan having to sit in there as this mature woman with with 16-year-olds who were doing it, and how it was done. And someone had given me this anecdote about the doctor saying, "I'll tell you where to go get this taken care of. It's going to be $400, and I don't want it in my handwriting," and yelling at the guy for his irresponsibility. That story I wanted to tell for sure. But she said, I think Joan would have this baby and pass it off as her husband's because she doesn't want to miss that chance. And she's obviously having trouble getting pregnant with her husband. We don't know why. And, well, part of it was out of town. And I said, but that marriage is not going to last. I knew that already. And she said, I think Joan is going to be the one. I think Joan is going to be the single mom. I think it's a lesson. There's a lesson to be told there about, lots of people are raised by single moms. Actually, most of the most successful people in the United States are raised by single moms. It's a tough road to go, but I think it's more than half the presidents.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the most successful people, but the presidents for sure. Yeah, Nixon. But anyway, that was a shock to me, and I just loved it. I was like, not just from an ironic storytelling, but I was like, that makes perfect sense.
It does. I mean, that's
And then we
thing.
kept trying to give her
Yeah.
money and
Right.
give her all these reasons that she didn't have to do it, and she had to do it. Sorry.
I just think what's amazing about it too is the way in which these characters fully inhabit themselves at a certain point. And there are things that start to happen that you think that's really what's true for this character and the way that they've evolved that you don't sort of see coming ahead of time.
No, and you know what? They are liars. They will tell you they're okay, and
Yeah,
they're not.
right.
And was like, but he said he was all right. I'm like, they also say murder is against the law. People commit murder.
Yeah.
He told her everything would be fine. I'm like, Don just says that. He didn't know.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Even just, and I think all of this, again, is just about the basic relationship we have with entertainment.
Well, so I have a question for you about
Sure.
that because I think The Sopranos changed television, and I actually think at this point you might have eclipsed David Chase as the master because
Why would you say something
because
like
you know why? Because I'll tell you why.
Let's not
No,
make. You know what?
I know,
Let's
but
stop
here's
making lists.
Okay, I'm not going to make a list. But what I think is amazing is the way in which Mad Men took on a culture, a time, an incredible evolution of sort of not just a world, but multiple worlds within worlds. I think it's pretty amazing. But the question really is about the evolution of television. And I look at the episode of Mad Men, the last episode, as maybe that's the last water cooler episode we're going to have in the sense of how people are watching television differently, how
there was
you
something
and Sopranos changed storytelling on television.
Well, we tell the story very differently than The Sopranos. Any comparison,
No, I don't mean, I
welcome.
meant just in terms of...
No, but I think that I was experiencing this, at a certain point, I was like, I wish this thing was over. If this was on Netflix, it'd be over.
Right.
Everybody would be watching it and whatever else it is. And then part of me was like, I don't think this is going to happen like this unless somebody really goes out of their way. I mean, if I did another TV show, even if I did, I hope to one day, but if I did something even with Netflix, I would try and convince them to let me just roll them out so that there was at least some shared experience. Because Netflix knows that most people who are talking about House of Cards have only seen like 4 of them.
Right.
They know, they're keeping track of it. And that then all of a sudden someone will watch the whole thing on a weekend. And so you can't say, did you see what season are you on? The whole thing. Like, I love the waiting.
Right.
I love the marination of the, when people, I think when you watch, an entire season of a show in like a day, you will definitely dream about it. But it's not the same as walking around the whole week saying like, God, that Pete really pissed me off. And then by the end of the week saying like, God, when he said he had nothing, that really hurt. That guy's like, I remember people saying that. Like you could reconsider it. You could and you'd see it sort of pop up in your life the way like when you're reading a good book.
Well,
That's gone. That's gone.
The space between episodes, things happen in that space, which I
Right.
think we don't account for now. But in that week between things, life shifts and things change, which is
Right.
kind of fascinating.
It is fascinating in terms of your psychological experience. Of like in a book, you can't read it I mean, I can't read that fast at all. But I also feel like the communal experience,
Right.
Don't spoil it for me, whatever, okay, there's not much left that we have communal now, right? You can still, the network used to be really on top of this stuff, not AMC, but network television in general. Like, they're not going to know that. Don't mention that. No one knows no one knows what Catch-22 is.
Right, absolutely.
As I remember that one.
Right.
I was like, I think it's an idiom. And they're like, idiom is also another thing they don't know.
Exactly.
And Steve Martin has that great line in Roxanne where he's like, oh, irony, we don't get that here. But, you start thinking of you start dumbing stuff down to appeal to a mass audience. And the audience, you watch a Warner Brothers cartoon and there's things you laugh at and things your kid laugh at. They don't know who Humphrey Bogart is. They don't know that's a joke. But they are laughing at at whatever. So I feel like you should be able to be as specific as you possibly can and let that sit with people. And I've loved having the period in between the shows.
Right.
And it probably is the end of it. and people are very impatient. I don't know at what point this is going to be. Probably when we get even higher employment for more hours per day, it will start to be seen as a negative thing to watch TV for 3 weeks. And then it will become more of a forbidden fruit, which is the way I was raised.
Right.
I was raised without television at all, actually, for the most part.
We had 30 minutes once a week.
30 minutes once a week. What'd you waste it on?
Adam 12.
That could do it.
And Dragnet. It was a hard call.
We were allowed to watch on Friday and Saturday night.
Oh, really?
So like Brady Bunch and then like Fantasy Island and that stuff. And Brady Bunch is earlier, Partridge Family, whatever.
Partridge Family.
But I was such a terrible student that it was taken away from me.
Absolutely.
So I was always like coming down with my homework to ask a question and watching while I was like, say, hey, Dad. And he's like, well, X equals, and I was like,
Exactly.
I never saw Happy Days, MASH, none of this stuff.
Right.
Then I went to college and almost failed out of college, basically, because I got a TV like the second.
Exactly.
I was going to say the second season of college.
Right, the second season of college, exactly.
I watched everything I'd
Right.
ever missed and beyond.
It's worrisome.
I
when
can
you-
quote Quincy.
Right, exactly. Yes.
I was like this. I don't think I ever turned it off. One of my college roommates is here. Actually, my best friend from college, Jeremy, and I used to joke that it was like another window in my room.
Right.
I was like, it's just
TV
going to be
window.
on. I like coming home and seeing that it's on.
Yeah. One of the things, so I wanted to
Does
talk.
it make you sound old to say that you don't like binge watching? Or you're just fighting, you're just like fight. It's like global warming. It's like, why fight it, right?
I don't think it's for everybody, the old binge watch.
I do love the idea of pressing that button and getting it right away and seeing as many of them as you could take.
Right.
But
But it is a little bit sometimes as many as you can take, and then you kind of feel like you binged and you don't feel entirely well.
it can't. I don't know about you. I never feel better about myself after I've watched too much TV. Well, I've improved myself. 10 hours of Ken Burns.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's a worry. Let me just check through here. I guess because we are at the library, I wanted to talk a tiny bit about writers and books.
Sure.
And John Cheever.
I love
Don
John Cheever.
Draper lives in Ossining, and he lives on Bullitt Park Road, which is, of course, my favorite Cheever book. But, I read something that talked about how you read Cheever's collected stories every season before you started writing.
I would read them on my own, as many as I could.
Not to
my
the-
favorites. No, I would read the introduction
Yeah.
to the collected stories out loud to the writer's room. I did it the first year, and then I made it a tradition because I'm very superstitious.
Right.
And I would also keep up with his journals until the end. But there was something that would confirm your suspicions about seeing a journal entry like, 2 days after JFK was assassinated and hearing no mention of it. And it was more about sneaking a drink in the pantry and redoing the yard. And he's from, he's a Yankee. He
Right.
cared about that. But my constant confirmation of reading people's letters is that real life is going on and that the New York Times is a reference for all of us.
Right.
But you cannot recreate human experience with the newspaper. Journals really
Right.
help.
We were talking about that one night, you and I,
Yes.
about things like the Kennedy assassination. And in Mad Men, there's is it the Sterling daughter's wedding is the next
Yeah,
day.
Mona Sterling,
But
yeah.
the idea that things just go on.
Margaret.
Right.
Yeah.
That things just go on, and there isn't necessarily.
We were like, somebody's wedding was planned for that day.
Right.
And I love, we put the invitation down of many episodes earlier, and I felt like it was like in that movie, A Night to Remember, where they go, darling, I love you, and they are on the boat thing, and
Right.
they move away, and there's just
Right.
like the lifesaver that says SS Titanic.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
I was like, that's entertaining.
Right.
Poor Margaret, you don't know we're going to go to the
Right.
wedding. I liked using it, we used all of these historic events as a way to tell a story about the human beings.
Right. Exactly.
And Don is a survivor. And Don told Betty, stop thinking about it. We know how well that works.
Exactly.
But that's how you survive.
Right.
I mean, what do you think? Childhood trauma, all this other stuff. I know that it is destructive and that people need to go to therapy and all these things that can happen and it doesn't go away. But they got through it because they were able somehow to not think about
Right.
it.
Now, you did say I could ask you anything tonight, so I was curious about therapy.
Yeah. Have I been in therapy?
Well, I'm sure you've been in therapy. I shouldn't
You're
say that.
so sure.
I'm so sure. Have you been in therapy?
Have I been in therapy?
And do you talk
Does
about
this
what you're
count?
writing? Yeah, a little bit. I'm not going to bill you tonight,
No,
though.
I don't think there should be any stigma about it. I am in therapy. I've had the same therapist for 15 years. We took a break when I was on The Sopranos, even though I really needed it then. Because I was in New York
you were
and
in
so
New York,
forth.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
but I won't give anything about her. Oh, now I said that. I have a pronoun
Do you talk about
problem.
work in therapy?
Oh my God, yeah, all
Yeah.
the time.
Did you talk about Don?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about Dawn and talk about all the things you want to say,
Right.
which is like, is it really true that when I am in the best creative, productive part of things that I have to be miserable?
Is that
And
really, is it really true?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I actually found writing to be, in particular, to be a different thing. But I was in so many fights, that I started to think is like, is this my problem, or are these people really, really screwing with me all the time? Like, you come in on budget the first season, and Lionsgate cuts your budget the next year.
Right.
And you're like, what? And, finally, we were fighting over money for the finale.
Right.
I made them $1 billion. Made AMC went public $1 billion. And for the most part, all the wounds have healed. But at a certain point, you're sort of thinking like, someone goes, you just like fighting. And you're like, maybe I do. Maybe. What will happen if I stop fighting? Will I not be able to work anymore? Will I not have any energy?
Right.
I'd rather not have the fight. So that's part of it too.
Right.
And in terms of the writing being there to actually be a place where you were completely in control, which I never realized.
Right.
I used to feel so much terror about performing and about, I bring in the scenes and read them to the writers the next day. I mean, it was instantaneous. Like, did I make it or did I not make it?
You did some acting. I mean,
I've done some acting, yeah.
and some improv.
I have done a lot of improv, actually. I did a lot of improv. I did stand-up. I did not like the roles I was being offered. I was frequently playing very boring people. Wanted to be leading man. I didn't understand.
Right.
But I can tell you that I don't know if I was particularly good at it either, but I was in a lot of plays in college. I think that at a certain point I got such severe stage fright, I actually went up on my lines in a student production my senior year in college because I wasn't prepared.
Right.
And after that, I was like, I don't think I can take this. And then also, I went to film school, and my friend who was an actor, his name is Rob Campbell, went to Yale to do drama. And one day we're talking, he goes, yeah, I'm in this play, it's called Hamlet Machine. So I come out with my penis tucked between my legs, and then I blah, 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 and I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, I want to play, Rick in Casablanca. I might want to be, Ratso in Midnight Cowboy. I might want to be Richard Gere in American Gigolo.
Sure.
Anybody, there's people who, Paul Giamatti, could I play him? You know what I mean? There's people I admire who are more in my looks range. And great actors who get great roles, J.K.
I feel like
Simmons.
there's an SNL in your future.
All I can tell you is that when I heard him say that his penis was exposed at the Longmore Theater, aptly named, that he was going to, I was like, I'm never, ever.
Right.
And I was always sensitive to making people, stage directions. I remember telling the writers right away, she plops into a chair. You're talking about, this is an instruction for a human being to do. She bursts into tears.
Right.
Do you want to see what that's like?
Right.
Do you really, which they usually would show me exactly what it looked like.
Right, exactly.
I'm great at making people cry. Nobody rolls their eyes.
Right.
Stop writing rolls their eyes. So anyway, I am very sensitive to the acting thing, and I really admire it, and I really value it. And part of the story, I don't know how the audience, I don't know how the world feels about acting as a profession. I think it's kind of an embarrassment to them. Even though they will not stop giving everything great and wonderful to actors, they also think it's not very serious. And telling that story with Megan, being a true artist, and choosing to pursue acting, I think that was hard for a lot of people. They're like, if she'd want to be a writer, they'd be like, oh, I get it. By the way, writer, not very dramatic.
Yeah.
All the ad guys who
But the
don't
thing
think there was
that's-
enough writing, got brainstorming on Mad Men, have never had to write a TV show.
You know, the thing that's about acting that's so amazing is that when someone is doing it well, you don't even think they're doing it. You just think, oh, that's who that
That's
person
my
is.
taste. That's
Right.
my taste, but
Right.
I don't think everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
I think they love it when they see the acting.
Oh,
I think
really?
they want to see them spitting and the quivering and them like chewing the scenery. The actors on Mad Men behave like real people.
Right.
And it has not been in style. I'm not saying this just because they haven't won awards. I just see when I sit through these clips, like the big screaming, bulging vein in the forehead, burst into tears, you know, the big speechifying, like, you know, I can barely, hoarse voice. I think that is what people are like. And actors are voting on it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I'm confused by it, but I believe in a more naturalistic style of behavior. And it's not that showy, because I never wanted people to be pulled out of the show. I think actually a lot of people's issues with pace and so forth could have been changed if the actors were screaming more.
See, I think the things about pace are also what's so incredibly remarkable, and in that way, like short story and like novels, and rolls out without the pressure of time, which is completely antithetical to sort of the rules of television.
Yeah, I mean, you're making it sound really unentertaining.
No, novels and short stories are unentertaining.
No, it feels normal to me. It feels normal
incredible.
to me. I wish that I could have as much story as John Cheever has in his stories, or you have in your stories, where you can tell the whole backstory and like flash back to somebody being a kid and hear about their parents and everything, and then they walk in the door and the story starts. I wish I could do that.
I think you did do that.
Well, we took 92 hours.
You did 92
yeah.
hours. I think you got it.
But
That's a lot of novels.
It is.
You know?
Novels are a harder thing for I prefer
We've had
short
this
story.
conversation.
Yeah.
I think Matt needs to write a novel because I think it'll take him about 2 weeks.
I need to read a novel first.
Well, I know, but you know,
No.
no. I think what's amazing is, to me, Mad Men really is. It's epic in scale, and it's so many wonderful stories and novels and lives represented.
It's a very high compliment. I mean, I like that comparison. I like the internal world of the novel. I like the idea if you want to see it as a novel, but I feel like, for me, series television, episode to episode, building it one stick at a time,
Right.
one season at a time,
Right.
was really the unit. And then one story at a time was a way to deal with everything that was on my mind. You know, you read something like Moby Dick, and I have actually read that. I read it all the way to the end. And you just see, to me, the first accumulation of details, of symbols, of references, of like payoffs.
Right.
Everything is an allusion to what's to happen. I don't even consider it symbolic. Everything is related to human experience. People can give meaning to everything that happens to them, is
Right.
really what you get. And we tried to do that on the show. And it wasn't an effort to say, like, okay, remember Roger said that line first season? It's on all of our minds. They live with us. We pretend, you know, you are okay. I know Don said it to Roger when he was on LSD. I got a good memory.
Right.
I know that Don said it in the pilot. And I believe if Don said it in the pilot in the middle of the pitch, he probably said it a lot of times. Because they go to that well for the
exactly,
pitches.
Yes, exactly.
I don't
think
know.
we
I
have
take it
some-
as a huge compliment, but I always wonder about the hierarchy of writing. We've talked about this, like, you know, where it fits on it, like, you know.
But I think that hierarchy is changing.
I don't know. I think poetry's still at the top.
You know, I was going to ask you about Frank O'Hara. So,
Frank O'Hara, I did not know about.
Really?
Until, yeah, I mean, he's in an anthology or
Right,
whatever. I knew
right.
John O'Hara,
Right.
a story writer, and
Maureen O'Hara.
Yeah, I knew Maureen O'Hara. I knew. Is it Officer O'Hara?
Right, exactly,
Yes.
yes.
From Batman.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yes. He's not a poet, but he is always upset, and Commissioner Gordon is on
Right,
the line.
exactly.
Also watched that in college.
Right.
My wife took me to what I think is one of my favorite places in New York, which is the Museum of the City of New York. And they had beautiful photographs. I believe they were they might have been Ouija. They were famous photographer, Roy DeCarava, somebody like that. A lot of pictures of the city of New York from that period. And then they had one of the lunch poems on a piece of paper, and you could pull it out and read it. And she had already been, took me to the exhibit. I picked up this poem, Lana Turner Has Collapsed, right?
Yeah.
Where he talks about, you know, he sees it on the headline, and he's out there in the snow, and he's got this great line. He goes, at the end, I've never been to Hollywood, but I have been to some parties, and I've never collapsed. Lana Turner, we love you, get up, or something like that. It's just like, it's like your funniest friend ever sitting next to you, and then every once in a while there'll be something that gets to you emotionally. And I thought, oh, Don will be reading lunch poems. You know, he'll see some guy reading it, and Don is absorbing the culture at all times. That's his job as an ad guy.
Right.
He's going to the movies, he's reading everything. He's not a snob. And it turned out it hadn't come out yet. So we got Meditations in an Emergency.
Right.
And then I read that, and it changed my life. It really did. I was like, this man is a great poet and a deep person, and through the most weird, there's so many weird coincidences on the show.
Yes.
At the last minute, Cater Gordon, who was the writer's assistant who was writing the script with, she goes, shouldn't he read some of this book that he keeps sending? He's handing it around, stuff like that. I'm like, just have John Hamm read the last page. We'll look at the last page, and there it is, that probably Frank O'Hara's most famous line.
Yes.
It's the catastrophe of, what is it?
It is, now I am quietly waiting for the catastrophe of my personality to seem beautiful again and interesting and modern. Right?
Right. I wasn't going to do it, and it happened to be the last page of the poem.
Right.
Of the book. Because
Right.
I was like, oh, he's finishing the book.
Right.
I mean, we found out that when we recreated McCann Erickson, that when we shot the pilot here in New York on Lexington Boulevard, that floor that we shot the pilot on was actually the creative floor of McCann Erickson in 1970.
Wow.
And so when Don walked out of that office, it was where we shot the pilot.
Right.
You know, just weird stuff. Pete and Trudy get into that plane at the end.
Yes, exactly.
And at Van Nuys Airport, and the guy says to me, you know, they shot Lost Horizon here. I was like, what? I thought that in the movie it takes place in China.
Well, I have to say, at the end, you know, the Esalen, which wasn't shot at Esalen, looks exactly like Esalen.
Anderson Canyon, it's right up, it's the same.
It was amazing.
Scott Hornbacher forced me to get into that fight with Lionsgate to go there to shoot. He was like, we can't do this in San Pedro.
Right.
We can't do this in Malibu even. Let's really make it there. And I have to tell you, if you've ever been to that part of the world, the Big Sur, it is a very unique place. I'm not a big nature person. And it was, I'm not, I like Manhattan.
Right. Are you like the person who goes outside in nature and goes, taxi?
Exactly. I like looking at the trees from a big building. Look at Central Park. It's so beautiful in the middle of all those hotels.
Right, exactly.
And it was a very special place to end the show, and I totally felt the way you do in like places like Idlewild or you know where Shangri-La was shot. You know.
Right.
So, Lost Horizon, but yeah, Frank O'Hara. That's the kind of thing that you get that was great about having that show every week, and it was terrifying because you'd want to tell the whole story of the show. But I mean, I would hear something on the radio or have a fight or whatever, or just like your brain, everything. You didn't want to just be, you know, some of it you'd write down and save for another time.
Right.
You know, be indiscriminate about like, oh, you know, I've gone to meetings at the studios where I know that the executive I'm talking to is pitching something to me that happened to them that morning.
Oh, yeah.
This, you know, so this guy's really mad at his trainer.
Exactly.
A lot of New York, a lot of the world is not interested in your story right now, but let's hear what the trainer did to you. Anyway.
I want to make sure we gather the cards for the questions.
Oh, they wrote them down on cards.
I also want to point out, you know, there's one of the New York, Billy Parrott, who's one of the New York Public Library librarians, created a reading list that's online, and among the books, he has a whole list for Dawn, which is Inferno and Exodus and The Spy Who Came In From the Cold and Portnoy's Complaint. And then he's got, you know, just books for everybody. And
yeah, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to ask you, I was curious what you fed on to make this show.
Oh, what I was reading?
Well, yeah, or what you were looking at, or what, you know.
It's a weird thing, like reading John Cheever's journals, which get more and more
Right.
depressing. And actually, he's a lot older than Don, so he's not always the same place in his life. And he's a different man than Don, boy. But he's a great writer. And so I always read the journals. I always read John Cheever. I would try and look at the bestseller list, maybe flip through that. I would look at top 10 movies, top 20 movies. You'd start to see, a lot of times it was my intuition about where we committed, it's unusual on a TV show, to commit how old the characters were.
Right.
And so once you have them at a place in life, even though that's changed over the years, you really kind of know where they are in their life, You know Peggy's 30th birthday, it's really, really big.
Yes.
People can say whatever
Right,
they want now,
right.
and it's not that big.
Right.
I don't know when adulthood is considered now.
I think it's usually
40?
30 comes right after high school now.
Right. And I would sort of try to think what they would be interested in. I read your work. I read The Elementary Particles before I started the second season. Michelle
Right,
Welbeck,
right,
which was given to me
right.
by Jeremy.
Right.
He's like, here's a book that you'll never read. And I actually read it. And it was kind of mind-blowing because it's this sort of perverse version of the sexual revolution. And he's an incredible, I read it in translation, but he's an incredible writer. I like classics, I like weird things. I like journals.
Right.
I read a lot of journals. Anybody who had a journal. One of the things, seriously, Manhattan when I was young. I'm trying, Jane,
Absolutely, right.
I don't remember her name, but I got so much from that. She lived
Right.
on Perry Street. She
Right.
raised her daughter alone.
Right.
She has such detail in that book. It was very helpful, very, very helpful. Fax Bar, Fax Cone, sorry. Fairfax Cone of Foot, Cone, and Belding has a book called The Blue Streak. Every ad guy had a book eventually.
Right.
And they're his memos. And there's a lot of pontificating. But I'm telling you something, you know what the time is like.
Right.
So that's probably what it was. And I watched a ton of movies. I'm always into movies. And TV, we really kept track of the TV.
Right.
A lot of it's still around. But
Really good TV and interesting TV.
really good, interesting TV, especially in the early 60s.
Right.
It
Plays,
kind of, yeah.
Padachevsky, we were talking about that.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
God, Rod Serling,
Right.
Padachevsky, Horton Foote,
Right.
Reginald Rose. I don't know if anybody knows these names. These are all, after World War II, the movie business saw TV coming and bought everything that existed. And you had no choice but to hire some fancy New York playwrights
Right.
who would write TV dramas or to do tales of the public domain. And so you might see Boris Karloff playing
Right.
Colonel,
Right.
playing Kurtz in The Heart of Darkness on
Right.
TV. 12 Angry Men, Requiem for a Heavyweight, Marty, we've talked about. It's
Incredible
just like
things, yeah.
Trip to Bountiful. This
Right.
is amazing. It's
Right.
it's all on TV. So and then
now-
it gets
yes.
really, really bad. It gets really, really bad.
When did it get bad?
Hee-haw.
Oh, yeah. Funny, I forgot about that one.
There is an anti-intellectual
believe you
streak.
said that out loud.
I think we're going into one now, believe it or
Right.
not.
That's very
Anti-intellectualism, where it's kind of
Yeah.
like, what's with all this highfalutin stuff? I don't want to think.
Right.
And what happened to the regular guy? And come on, I just want to be entertained. I want chewing gum for my eyeballs. I want popcorn. And the thing that's been great about cable TV is that there is room to make $1 billion with different. That's
Right.
the greatest thing about The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Is it was only in 30 million households when there's 300 million whatever people,
Right.
and was the most successful business in the United States, HBO. So that niche marketing, when you have this many people, the television business internationally made $47 billion last year. It is the most successful business, I think, in the world. They sell shows that get canceled.
Right.
They sell
Exactly. Right.
seriously, they'll
Right.
sell 6 episodes of something to some place and they'll run it as a miniseries.
Right. And it didn't used to be that way. It used to be you had to wait to be syndicated, and then that's when money was made.
99 cents.
Yeah.
No one thinks that's money.
Right.
That's amazing. So we have benefited, not writers, from royalties at all, actually.
Right.
But we have benefited as an audience member from the niche sort of
Right.
But in the late 60s, in fact, there's a famous story about the guy at CBS who pulled the plug on a lot of these, on Petticoat Junction, a lot of these shows, and brought in All in the Family and Mary
Right.
Tyler Moore and MASH. There's a reason those were all
was
in.
that?
I think his name is Wood. I want to say Robert Wood. I'm not positive, but
Right.
he was an executive who basically said, it's enough of this.
Right.
We're going to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace by giving a quality. And he canceled the Beverly Hillbillies, some successful shows.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's not to demean any of those shows.
No,
Those
no,
were
no, but
people,
it's- right.
you know, they're still on for a reason.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Well, we have questions, a few. One from Billy Parrott, that very famous New York public librarian.
Oh, really?
Yes. It says from Billy Parrott.
Oh, hi, Billy. Thank you. I will tell Allison Mann that you said hello, because she says hi to you. That's our head of research.
Fantastic.
And Billy can keep a secret, by the way.
Oh, he keeps secrets?
Yeah,
That's good to know.
we would research stuff and
he would
it would
keep
go
it-
through the library, and I think it went through Billy. But anyway,
Right.
go ahead.
Billy wants to know, were there any unscripted improvised lines that made it into the show?
No. You know what? John says in the carousel scene, Sal was supposed to get the lights, and it was a pain. It took for him to stand up and do
Right.
it, and it's the other side of the room. So John just said, "Sweetheart," that wasn't in the script.
Right.
And occasionally things don't come out exactly as you wrote them, and they're better. But no, nothing. It's just not the way we work.
Exactly. Okay. All right, we got two more. Betty Draper is one of the most tragically beautiful characters ever seen on television. When did you realize that her character was going to die?
Well, they're all going to die, first of all. People die of cancer in the United States. It's up there. I knew very early on. Her mother had just died in the pilot, and I felt this woman wasn't going to live long. And we loved the idea of her realizing her purpose in life right when she ran out of time.
Right.
And I have to say, to me, despite all the emotions that I feel for these people, that moment when she's in the kitchen and he says, "Why are you going back to school? Why are you going? What are you doing?"
Right.
And she says, "Why was I ever doing it?" I just feel like if she was not dying of cancer, that's not a very good line.
Right.
I think there's a lesson to be learned about the randomness of things, and also she obviously has some predisposition and some fairly seriously cancer-causing behavior.
Right, exactly. Right
So-
up to the end.
Right up to the end, well,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
Yeah, I knew she was going to die probably. Well, I don't know how long the show would go, but I think once we knew, once we were past at the end of season 4, there's a big contract thing, and once we signed for 36 more episodes, I did want to blow it out every season. We used everything we could think of, but in the back of my mind, I knew at that moment, I knew about the Coke ad at that point.
Right.
I knew about Betty dying. I knew that I didn't know Peggy and Stan would end up together. That had to be proved to me.
I have to say, I love that. I love that part. I love the use, I mean, throughout, but the use of the telephone and the way that they're much more intimate on the phone than they can bear to be in person, which is really how it is sometimes.
It's funny because it's a bad in drama. At
It's
least I
horrible.
was
It's
raised that way. It was
completely- no, you
told,
don't
get
do
them in the
that.
same room.
Absolutely. You don't send letters saying that people
No,
are dying.
come on. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
It's a big scene. Get them in the same room. I don't care what happened. Somebody's car broke down. They have to go to the same gas station.
Right, exactly.
And David Chase did not have any of these rules, but I heard
Yeah.
that before I ever met him. Like, don't do that over the phone.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of the most important things that ever happened to me in my life have happened over the phone. It's a dramatic situation almost all the time when you answer the phone, if you answer the phone.
Well, it's changed. I mean,
Yeah.
you had no option at that point.
I've done the option that you had that we don't even talk about anymore, which we just sit there and talk and it would just ring.
Right, exactly.
It's just act like
Right.
nothing happened. I
Right.
just remember that doing so many times in my life. My dad, just
yeah.
ring, 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 ring. Someone gonna get that? No.
We have many people say this, but people love the music that you used, and they want to know, were the songs favorites of yours, or were they chosen by a musical director?
I would say that they're mostly my favorite songs, but sometimes you can't figure it out. Writers always pitch stuff, and I told them to stop putting it in the script because I don't know until you see it.
Right.
And sometimes we get stuck, and I invite people in and we just try different songs. But for the most part, I was so delusional about having a TV show that I actually, on my iPod, was collecting songs that I thought could go in the Mad Men television program before I ever had a show. And
so you had a playlist.
I had a playlist that was a lot of songs. And I love music.
Yeah.
I'm not a musician, but it gets tough too, because there are songs that are very popular to you that other people don't know. And you don't use them because you think they're too popular.
Right.
Like, 16 Tons.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Like, we grew up singing that song.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I played it for people and they were like, wow. And then,
Right.
But I have to say that some of people's favorite songs sometimes come from other people. And I remember, I'd say probably one a year is from somebody else, and it's usually a really good one. Mm-hmm. And we also have a music supervisor, Alex Petsavas, who does a lot of the music that you hear in the background, who will find cues. When you buy I Wasn't Made for These Times from Brian Wilson, it costs a ton of money. And I wanted to do this thing when they were on acid, where they were playing 2 songs at once, because this is something people used to do when they would take LSD. I've never taken it, but I have accumulated many, many people's experiences. Because the one thing you can say to somebody is that, you took acid, what was it like? And you just sit back.
Right, exactly.
It's the greatest, man. And then it starts off with the greatest, and then eventually you'll find out when they stop taking acid. Because
Right.
And then we were sitting in the front row of 2001, and I thought that time had stopped and I was dead. It's like, okay.
So we're about to wrap up, but I wanted to talk for a minute about the end and the Coke commercial.
Sure.
And the other day you said something so interesting to me, was that along the lines of, Coke was this huge thing, that they didn't have to make that commercial. That it was...
Yeah, they always have to make a commercial.
Well, right,
and
but I mean in the
McCann Erickson is always trying to get them to do new work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
The worst kind of account you can have is something like Hebrew National, where, they have that ad with Uncle Sam and it runs for like 25 years. The ad agency didn't make anything after the first time. They can buy time, and that's where the business is now, buying time, but they don't get to make another ad. So Coca-Cola, a trendsetter in advertising always, definitely, as much as cereal, a product of advertising. But I think that I did hear rumblings of people talking about the ad being corny. And it's a little bit disturbing to me, again, back to this sort of cynicism. I'm not saying that advertising is not corny, but I'm saying that the people who find that ad corny are they're probably experiencing a lot of life that way, and they're missing out on something. Because 5 years before that, black people and white people couldn't even be in an ad together.
Right.
Okay? And the idea that some enlightened state, and not just co-option, might have created something that is very pure. And yeah, there's soda in there with a good feeling, but that ad, to me, it's the best ad ever made. And it comes from a very good place, which is a desire to sell Coca-Cola, probably. You shouldn't write everything off. The ambiguous relationship we have with advertising is part of why I did the show. My main character in the pilot is selling cigarettes, and we cheer when he figures out a new way to sell them.
Right.
Yeah.
I
said, he doesn't kill Tony. He's not Tony Soprano. He doesn't kill people, but he kills people. And he's very clear about what it is. We see when he loses Lucky Strike and tries to save his image that he says, I know that this product is terrible for people and kills the people who buy it. So we go to the Whitney today, and you just see not just that artists are forced, basically, because it's so hard to make a living on pure art, into working in advertising, whether they're Man Ray or like, Margaret Borkwhite or, Dorothea Lange. You see their ad work. You see the irony come in. You see Andy Warhol.
Right.
We know what it plays in our life. And we still have some sort of superiority to it or contempt for it. And I'm not saying that there's, I'm not here to advocate for more advertising. I don't need to anyway. For some reason or other, people are more tolerant of it than they've ever been in the history of time. No one, the idea that you would you would get TV for free if you watched the ads changed when people had to start paying for cable and watching the ads.
Right.
And then you get stuff, on YouTube where they're like, the ad is forced on you and the revenue is it's not even going to the people who made the product that you're watching.
Right.
All of this is very, it will turn around in some way. But I felt like that ad in particular is so much of its time, so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I don't think as I don't know what the word is, as villainous as the snark of today thinks it is.
Well, I mean, the series, and I thought the ending was actually so incredibly beautiful and perfect, and the notion of also going to commercial at the end. I mean, it was.
I did, in the abstract, I did think like, why not end this show with the greatest commercial ever made?
Well, yeah.
But in terms of what it means to people and everything, I am, again, not for ambigity's sake, but it was nice to sort of have your cake and eat it too, in terms of like, what is advertising, who is Don, and what is that thing? And I think unless your heart is made of ice, it's hard to watch that. And I'm not talking about the nostalgic thing.
Right.
I'm talking about people who are just seeing it for the first time. I showed it to Kiernan. Okay? She doesn't know this ad.
Right.
She's like, that song is so beautiful. They're also, I don't think there are people with faces that pure on TV anymore.
Right. Well, we have a treat for you. We want to say just thank you for 92 hours of incredible television. We want to raise a bottle to you. Does everyone have a bottle with them?
Oh, wow. Oh, man, they're going to love this.
We have,
You do know, right?
What do we
No
need
money
to know?
changed
Right,
hands.
yes, exactly, right, exactly. I think these were, yes. But
Raymond Loewy designed that bottle. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you from everybody here for
Thank
just
you,
so
everybody.
many years of an incredible show.
I would like to say thank you.
I don't have my bottle.
They were out here and I got rid of them. There were bottles out here and I was like,
I'd like to build the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honeybees and snow white turtle doves. I'd like to teach the world